The wealthy Arab businessman laughed so loudly that the entire ballroom turned to stare, pointing at the young black waitress. He sneered, "If you can dance a tango with me, I'll marry you on the spot." His words weren't a proposal, they were a cruel joke. The crowd erupted in laughter. But what they didn't know was that this so-called waitress carried a secret that would silence the entire room. The ballroom was dazzling, golden chandeliers spilling light across marble floors, violins weaving melodies through the air as New York's wealthiest mingled in their gowns and tuxedos. Amara Johnson moved silently among them, her uniform crisp, a tray of champagne balanced effortlessly in her hand. She was used to being invisible, used to smiling politely even when her heart ached. Tonight was just another shift, another paycheck that would go toward her daughter's tuition, and the rent that always seemed to rise faster than her wages. But fate had a cruel sense of timing. He saw her, the Arab businessman, tall, broad-shouldered, his silk suit glistening with wealth, dripped arrogance with every word. Rings adorned his fingers and gold links wrapped his wrist like trophies. He scanned the room with sharp, entitled eyes and suddenly stopped at Amara. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "You there," he barked, his accent thick but his words sharp. "Bring me a glass, no, wait. Better yet." He paused for dramatic effect, raising his voice so all could hear. "This is America? They let anyone serve food here?" The room stiffened. Then came his punchline, the cruelty masked as humor. "Tell you what, if you dance a tango with me and manage not to trip, I'll make you my wife." The guests burst into laughter. Some laughed too hard, eager to please the powerful man. Others chuckled awkwardly, their eyes darting toward the floor. A few looked away entirely, ashamed of the spectacle yet too cowardly to stop it. Amara stood frozen, her dark eyes fixed on him. The tray in her hand suddenly felt unbearably heavy. Heat rushed to her cheeks, her stomach twisted, her pride screamed. She had been here before. Not this ballroom, not this night, but in countless moments when people saw her skin first and her humanity last. The laughter stabbed deeper than the words. For a second, she thought of dropping the tray and fleeing into the kitchen, hiding in the shadows where humiliation couldn't follow. But then another thought rose stronger. No more running. She drew in a slow breath, forcing her hands to steady, her heart to stop pounding. She looked around the room at the smirks and the smug faces, and then back at the man who mocked her. He thought she was powerless. He thought he owned the stage. He didn't know her. Inside her chest, old memories flickered alive. Memories of another life. Another Amara. The applause of crowds. The warmth of the spotlight. The swirl of silk dresses and polished shoes. She had been a dancer once. A real dancer. Not just a hobbyist, but a competitor. Trained in tango, salsa, and waltz. A woman who had once dreamed of traveling the world to perform. She had fought for that dream until the doors kept closing. Until rejection after rejection left her standing. Outside auditions she never got to take, told in polite tones that she didn't fit the image. Life had stripped her of that world. But it had never stripped her of her skill. She had buried it, yes, traded it for stability, for survival. But it was still there, coiled inside her like a secret flame waiting for a spark. Tonight the spark had been lit. She placed the tray down on a nearby table with deliberate grace. Every clink of glass silenced another chuckle. She turned, straightening her back. No longer the invisible servant, but a woman reclaiming her power. Her eyes met his, unflinching. "Fine," she said, her voice calm yet sharp enough to cut through the chatter. "Let's dance." A hush swept through the room. The laughter died in throats replaced by whispers. The arrogant man blinked, then smirked, certain he had baited her into further humiliation. But as the orchestra shifted, the violins drawing out the opening chords of a tango, something in Amara's posture made the air in the room change. She stepped forward, her chin lifted high, her every movement suddenly commanding attention. The ballroom that had mocked her seconds ago now leaned forward. Unsure, uneasy, curious. Amara was no longer just a waitress. She was about to remind them who she really was. The music rose. He extended a mocking hand. She placed hers in it not with meekness but with quiet authority. And as the first notes pulsed through the air, the game was no longer his. The violin swelled, the rhythm sharp and deliberate, echoing across the marble floor. All eyes were on them. He smirked, pulling her closer with a strength that was meant to intimidate, not guide. To him, this was nothing more than a show, another opportunity to flaunt his power. But Amara's body moved with precision, her balance unshaken, her frame unyielding. She let him think he was leading. In truth, she was in control from the very first step. The first sweep of her leg across the floor stole the air from the room. Her steps were sharp, perfectly timed with the staccato beats of the bandoneon. She was no amateur fumbling at a party. She was a professional, trained, and it showed in every line of her body. The arrogant man's grin faltered just for a moment. As he realized the woman he tried to humiliate wasn't stumbling, she was shining. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Guests leaned forward, their laughter replaced by awe. The quick pivots, the tight turns, the flawless posture. Amara danced like the floor belonged to her. Every step she took was a declaration. I am not what you think I am more. The man tried to recover, tried to wrest control of the dance, spinning her harder, forcing her into quicker steps, hoping to trip her. But Amara didn't falter. When he pushed, she responded with elegance. When he tried to overpower, she absorbed the energy and redirected it. Their dance became a silent battle, his arrogance against her resilience, his mockery against her dignity. And with every passing second, it was clear who the crowd was rooting for. Murmurs filled the air. She's incredible. Wait, wasn't she just serving drinks? How does she move like that? Even those who had laughed moments before found themselves clapping. Swept away by her mastery, the ballroom's atmosphere transformed from ridicule to respect, from cruelty to reverence. Amara felt it too. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was living, reclaiming the dream she thought she had lost. The music wrapped around her, her body flowing with it as naturally as breath. Every spin reminded her of the girl she used to be, the competitor who had once lit up dance halls before life had beaten her down. Tonight that girl was back. The businessman, meanwhile, had grown more restless as the night wore on. He couldn't bear the whispers, the shame. In a final act of arrogance, he stormed toward the exit, muttering, "This city has no class. You applaud a servant and insult a king. You'll regret this." But his threats fell flat. No one rushed to defend him. No one followed him out. He left the ballroom smaller than when he entered, his shadow trailing behind him like defeat. The gala ended with smiles, laughter, and chatter, but Amara noticed something different as she cleared the last of the glasses. Guests no longer looked through her. They looked at her, some with admiration, some with guilt, but all with respect. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. On her way out, as the night air cooled her skin, she thought about everything that had happened. She thought about her daughter, waiting at home, and how proud she would be to hear the story one day. Not of a waitress mocked, but of a woman who stood tall. She thought about the offer she had received, the possibility of stepping back into the world of dance, and she thought about the man who had tried to break her and failed. Racism had tried to define her tonight. It had tried to reduce her to a punchline, a spectacle, a joke. But instead, she had shown everyone, most importantly herself, that dignity cannot be stolen, only surrendered. And she had refused to surrender. As she walked down the quiet street, the sounds of the city buzzing softly in the distance, she carried herself with the same posture. She had held on the dance floor, spine straight, chin lifted, eyes forward. She had been tested, humiliated, challenged, but she had answered not with anger, not with despair, but with her truth. And the world had listened. That night would not erase the struggles she still faced. Racism would not vanish because of one dance, but something inside her had shifted forever. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, reclaiming her voice, her art, her future. Amara whispered to herself as she unlocked her car, her voice steady and strong. "They'll never laugh at me again." And with that, she drove home under the glow of the city lights, knowing that the next chapter of her life had already begun. Racism can try to strip a person of dignity, but true strength lies in refusing to bow to hatred. Amara's story reminds us that respect isn't given by wealth or status. It's earned through courage, resilience, and the refusal to let others define who we are. The applause still echoed long after the music had stopped. Amara moved through the crowd with her tray, trying to return to her work. But people followed her with their eyes, whispering in awe. Some smiled apologetically, ashamed they had laughed at her before. Others clapped her on the back, muttering things like, "That was incredible," or "You showed him." But not everyone was pleased. The Arab businessman's jaw tightened as he watched her. His pride had been shredded in front of New York's elite, and the sting of humiliation burned hotter than fire. He poured himself another glass of champagne, gulping it down in one swallow. His gaze locked on Amara with simmering rage. He approached her again, forcing a laugh as though he still owned the moment. "Not bad," he said loudly, pretending the performance had been part of his plan all along. "You've got some talent. For a waitress." His words dripped with poison, his pride refusing to let go. Amara didn't flinch. She looked at him calmly, then turned away without answering. The dismissal was more powerful than any insult. The crowd noticed. Murmurs spread again, this time not in his favor. She embarrassed him. He can't stand it. Serves him right. The businessman clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. He had built his reputation on dominance, on being untouchable, and here, in front of everyone, a black waitress had reduced him to nothing. His voice rose, louder now, sharp with desperation. "You think one little dance makes you special? Don't forget your place," he snapped. "You're nothing more than help. Don't mistake applause for respect. These people will never see you as their equal." The words hung in the air like venom. Some guests gasped. Others looked away, ashamed for him. Amara turned slowly, her eyes steady. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I don't need their respect," she said evenly. "I have my own." The crowd fell silent. It wasn't a dramatic retort, not a clever quip. It was stronger than that. It was truth. And truth didn't need volume to cut deep. The businessman's face twisted, his arrogance cracking into fury. He stepped closer, towering over her, trying to reclaim the power he had lost. But before he could say another word, a voice rang out from the crowd. "That's enough." It came from an older man near the front, a respected philanthropist whose name carried weight in the city. He stepped forward, his cane clicking against the floor, his sharp eyes narrowing on the Arab businessman. "I invited you here as a guest," he said firmly, "but your behavior tonight has been disgraceful. You mocked a woman for her race, for her work, and you tried to humiliate her in front of us all. Instead, you humiliated yourself." The businessman, though, grew restless. His pride burned hotter with every cheer for her, every clap that wasn't for him. He tightened his grip, his hand pressing into her back harder, his movements turning aggressive. He wanted to regain dominance, to put her in her place. But the harder he tried, the more obvious it became he couldn't break her rhythm. She wasn't a prop in his spectacle anymore. She was the star. Suddenly, with a sharp flick of her heel, Amara spun out of his grasp, the move so swift and seamless that it drew applause. She turned, locking eyes with him, her expression calm but unyielding, as though daring him to continue. The crowd erupted into cheers, some rising to their feet. The man's face flushed crimson. This was supposed to be his joke, his stage, but now he was the one exposed. The tango reached its crescendo, the music fast and fiery. Amara poured every ounce of emotion into those final steps, every insult she had endured, every door slammed in her face, every moment of being underestimated. She spun, dipped, and glided with flawless strength, commanding the space as though she had been born to it. And in that final beat, she executed a dramatic pose, her body perfectly aligned, her chin high, the picture of defiance and grace. The ballroom erupted. Applause thundered, cheers echoed, and voices shouted her name, though most didn't even know it. Strangers clapped, whistled, even stomped their feet. The same people who had laughed at her now celebrated her, their eyes wide with admiration. The businessman stood frozen, his chest heaving, his smirk long gone. He had thought he could humiliate her, but instead, he had been the one humiliated. His arrogance had backfired spectacularly, and everyone knew it. Amara stepped back, offering him no smile, no acknowledgement. She didn't need his approval, nor the crowd's. Her dignity had been restored, not because they clapped for her, but because she had chosen not to shrink, not to bow, not to let racism define her. She picked up her tray from the table where she had left it, straightened her uniform and turned away, ready to return to her duties as though nothing had happened. But nothing in that room would ever be the same again. The applause didn't stop. It followed her as she walked, heads turning, whispers spreading like wildfire. The rich Arab businessman lowered his gaze, trapped in the weight of his own shame. He had meant to mock her. Instead, she had made him look small before the very people he wanted to impress. The night had shifted. Amara had shifted it. And though she returned to the shadows of the ballroom, in that moment she had been the brightest light in the room. Music faded. but the power of the moment lingered in the air like smoke after fire. The ballroom had been transformed. Amara, who only hours ago was invisible in her uniform, had become the center of attention, not because she sought it but because she demanded respect. Through her very presence, the Arab businessman tried to slink away quietly, retreating toward the bar. But the stares that followed him were not those of admiration. They were sharp, disapproving, judgmental. His arrogance had betrayed him, and the wealth he wore like armor no longer impressed anyone. In the corner, a few men whispered, shaking their heads. Women turned their faces away as he passed. He had been stripped of his shine, his cruelty laid bare for everyone to see. Amara, meanwhile, went back to work. Her tray felt light in her hands now, not because the glasses had fewer ounces of champagne, but because her spirit no longer bore the weight of silence. She smiled at a guest who whispered, "You were magnificent." Another murmured, "Don't ever let anyone talk to you that way again." Compliments came from all directions, but she accepted them quietly. She wasn't interested in their pity or sudden admiration. Tonight had been about something bigger. Later in the evening, as the gala wound down, the philanthropist who had spoken out earlier approached her. His sharp eyes had softened, his cane tapping gently against the floor as he came closer. "Miss Johnson," he said kindly, "forgive me for not stepping in sooner. What you endured tonight, no one should have to. But you handled it with more grace than most of us could ever hope to muster." Amara nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. I just couldn't let him take my dignity." "Not again." He studied her a moment, then smiled. "Do you know I happen to sit on the board of a cultural foundation here in the city? We fund artistic talent, dancers, musicians, performers. We give them the stage they deserve. Have you ever considered returning to your art?" Her breath caught in her chest. It had been years since anyone had seen her as more than just a waitress. Years since anyone had connected her with the dreams she had once nurtured. Her throat tightened, but she managed a whisper. I used to dance professionally. Before life. Before everything." "Then perhaps it's time," he said firmly. "We'd be honored to support you. Come see us. I think the world needs to see more of what we saw tonight." Amara blinked, struggling to steady herself. For so long she had carried the weight of lost opportunities, believing her chance had passed. But now, a door, one she thought had been closed forever, was being offered back to her.